Welcome back to the tutorial for God Hard mode. Act 2 has one part that is extremely difficult. I refer to it as the hill. It's basically the final hill that you have to take over, and it's brutal. Now this time it took me around 1 hour and 40 minutes to beat, but in the past it apparently took me over 5 hours to beat that one part. It's a single checkpoint. The reason I know that is because I contributed some strategies to the Game Facts Vanquish guide that was written by Apathy, which is my friend the Ripper999 who I mentioned. And, in that guide there was a few alternative strategies that I contributed under the name Walking Beast. So you can see some of those there. Though some of those strategies I didn't end up using this time around because... I think in one of them I got lucky, and it's not really a viable strat. It's just that, when I beat it, that was the strat that I used. So I didn't really test it by doing the same parts over and over again or anything like that. And same type of thing with this tutorial. I'm not replaying segments. I mean, I beat the game on this mode 9 years ago, but aside from that, I'm only playing through this again a single time. So... I don't remember everything I did 9 years ago. Most of it is hazy. So yeah, this part is very easy. You're just going to hang back and, I recommend carrying the laser with you most of the time. Just, use a ranged weapon, but, the laser is what I would go with. And you can take out all those enemies very easily without really having to get in the midst of the combat. So yeah, on this stage, the main thing that you're probably going to have trouble with is going to be that fucking hill, which is, like I said, brutally difficult. The way I did it was a very specific... All the movements were extremely specific, so when I detail that part, you want to follow exactly the way I do it. No real variation in that, no flexibility. And I will try to break that down and explain it as I do it. I had to find a very, very specific path. It gets me up the hill extremely fast, but... the trade-off is that one fuck-up, and you're dead, and, there's... a lot of luck involved too. It doesn't work. There's no way I would be able to do that every time. I'd have to find something better. If for a more consistent method, I think I'd have to play it even more. But I was lucky to beat it within an hour and 40 minutes this time. Luckily, it didn't take 5 hours this time. Part of the reason was that I understood the value of the cigarettes, which I'll explain more about later. It's kind of a hidden feature in this game. So, yeah, I try to shoot that guy through the crate, but that doesn't work. But basically, you can just hang back. This is another very easy section with the laser. You can just kind of pick these guys off and take your time. There's a lot of these little parts on this mode that are not hard at all. There's a lot of parts that have very little resistance if you play carefully. And then you have a handful of parts in the entire game that are extremely difficult. There's only a few of them in the entire game that I found, very, very difficult. And then, of course, there's the final bosses, which are way more fucking difficult than anything else in the game. It's a huge jump in difficulty, but... so some parts, you're going to be able to get by on just playing carefully, and you won't really need a lot of skill to get past a lot of these parts. But there's going to be parts that force you to get better and to definitely have a lot of skill to get through. And some luck. So for this part... I throw out my, my stun grenades, and I just slide through. But you want to do it a certain way so that, you'll have to probably try it a few times. It's a little harder than it looks to get through there, but you'll get it if you follow a similar tactic. Now this is a little tricky. I always have a rocket launcher on hand so far in the game, so I utilize that by using, two of my rockets on the one Romanov on the right side when you spawn, and I used one of my rockets on the guy riding the robot, just to take him out immediately, because one rocket will kill him. Then I just finish off with my grenades and stuns and finish off this guy. And I mean, that made it pretty easy, because I was very, very aggressive with taking out the first Romanov. And, of course, the guy on the riding the robot on the left. So it was very, very specific. And it ends that encounter pretty quick. Now, anytime, if you don't have the loadout that you want, like if you don't have the rocket launcher for this part, there's often weapon containers close by. You can use stun grenades to try to grab weapon containers. And each time you open a weapon container, you get a different weapon. It's random. So there is a good chance that you'll be able to get the rocket launcher in that green chest over there with the weapons. Though sometimes it seems like certain weapons don't show up in certain chests. So I didn't try that chest, so I don't know if that's the case. But a lot of times you can get the weapons you want. You just have to commit suicide again and again and just keep opening all the weapon chests until you get what you want. And then when you die with a weapon equipped, you will respawn with that weapon. So that's how you get the weapons you want, which I explained in the previous tutorial on Act 1. But I know most players are probably just going to be searching the tutorial for specific parts. So yeah, anytime you need specific weapon loadout to follow my strategies, dig through the weapon chests and just keep dying. You got to commit suicide. If you go to reload checkpoint, you won't reload with the weapon. But as long as you commit suicide with the desired weapon, you'll respawn with it. And you can just keep dying until you get what you want. So this is a very easy turret sequence to start out with. This part can be tricky after this part because you got guys flipping around on the tracks going up above you. But yeah, if you use the turret, you can take out these drop ships pretty quickly. You can either shoot the robots on the top of the drop ship or you can blow up the ship itself. And once that runs out of ammo, you'll want to switch to the other turret on the left side. But yeah, this part is very easy. This is one of the, I thought, one of the coolest sequences because it's unique in that you have enemies going up above you and shooting down at you from different angles, and you're on a train that goes upside down and shit. I thought this part was really, really well done for an action game. One of the coolest action sequences that I've probably played in a game, just because of the way the train is moving and having other trains on the rails. I thought it was a very cool sequence. This game has some really, really impressive design that you don't really see even in modern games now, 9 years later. And the mobility, the amount of control you have over your character and the mobility is like no other third-person shooter that I've played. There's a lot of depth to the combat, to the every different gun has a different melee attack attached to it. There's really a lot to this game. So yeah, now it gets a little trickier. There's going to be some enemies that start showing up on the sides. I like using the laser cannon to to hose them down. Especially if you hit the heads, you can take out the regular robots fast and the turrets and all that shit. Also use your stun grenades. Don't worry about wasting them because once you get the checkpoint, you get all your shit back. So you don't have to be real. You don't have to budget your grenades too much. Of course, throwing them always opens you to get shot, so you got to be careful when you toss them. But it is worth tossing them to get some easy shots, and you can use the anti-armor pistol for some quick kills, or the try to use the laser cannon if your shields aren't down. It gets a little tricky when the train goes upside down like this because now you got guys shooting down. If you were on one piece of cover, it becomes ineffective. So you have to switch cover to adapt to how that train is moving, so you don't get shot. So it can be a little tricky. They can really get at you at some strange angles, as they move around. You also have these turrets on the side too, so you can try to jump on one of the turrets and just mow down, some of the enemies if you want. It is more riskier, but it's definitely an option. I recommend using it when this single Romanov is out because that'll kill him really fast. So yeah, eventually you're going to have more enemies coming in. You have to ride for a little while. And then the train comes to a stop. Now you have some more enemies coming in. You can play this part very aggressively. I do recommend still having the rocket launcher and the weapons that I have, because in this area, I don't know that you can get specific weapons that you want. I think you only have a few options, because I don't think there's any weapon chests here. The weapon chests have random weapons usually, but the weapon racks usually have predetermined weapons from what I can, from what I noticed. That seems to be the case. So that's why I do recommend bringing certain weapons and certain loadouts. I recommend following what I've been carrying. I like having a rocket launcher on hand up to this point in the game, the laser cannon. And then, the third weapon is kind of optional, but I like the anti-armor pistol. But you could always substitute that for a shotgun or something like that, because the laser cannon takes care of long-range shit pretty well. So yeah, now that you got the checkpoint, you can use your rocket launcher to take out these transports if you want. Or take out this one transport at least. I think there's another one. But you can put some rockets into them. And then if you do that, it may prevent you from having to fight a bunch of robots, on your ship. I think they drop down onto the ship, but I'm not sure because I blew them up immediately. I recommend just taking them out. I mean, if you want, you can ignore them, but then you may need to fight them on the actual ship or train. But yeah, once you have just one Romanov, it's extremely easy. Just unleash all your stun grenades and your hand grenades, laser cannon, anti-armor pistol. You have plenty of things to use against these guys. The hammer ones are one of the easier ones because I don't think they can even shoot. I think all they have is the hammer. They're like the easiest ones to deal with pretty much. Now for this part, you can be very aggressive and start taking out the enemies quickly. I recommend taking out this right side. You want to try to burn the heads of the ones that are riding the vehicles. It takes them out very fast. It's a little tricky to get the angle. But you can definitely do it, as shown. Use the anti-armor pistol if your shields are down. That'll afford you the ability to take off some pop shots. Because, with the laser cannon, you have to wait for your shields to recharge before you can use it. That's the one big limitation of it. But it does have infinite ammo, so it kind of makes up for it. So yeah, use your anti-armor pistol to take out some of these remaining enemies. It makes them very easy. Now this part, I just roll around and try not to hit into any walls. I just keep rolling basically for this part. I didn't know how else to deal with this part because there seems to be no safe cover for this part. So all I do is just keep rolling around until the cutscene plays. And you see I barely made it. I don't know if there's a better way to do that part, but that's how I always ended up doing it. Or at least this time. So after this, you're going to get a quick time event. I think you just have to mash X. Very simple. Yeah, very cool sequence. I think it's one of the best action sequences in a game, even to this day. So yeah, we're starting to approach the hill sequence that I talked about, but there's still a little ways to go before that sequence appears. There's also going to be another hard fight after that with two bias that are like these Terminator-style robots, and there's two of them at the same time. But you do have a big arena, and I'll show you how to pull some bullshit on that fight and make it a lot more manageable. But I do recommend holding on to that rocket at this point so far, because it'll allow you to have 6 rockets for the bias fight, because there's an extra rocket on the map. Though I think you can, if you don't have it, you can pick it up on that fight anyway and just commit suicide and have your 6 rockets. I'm pretty sure you can still get around that, but I do recommend holding on to it for now. I am going to recommend switching out the pistol for a shotgun before the hill comes out. But again, you're going to have a chance to do that if you didn't do it, because you can commit suicide and get the weapons you want. So don't worry too much about not picking up a certain weapon for a certain checkpoint, because you usually get what you need. Most of the time. I think there's a few incidences where you can't do that, but most of the time you can get what you want. It's good because it allows you to experiment with different loadouts, and you don't have to be too afraid of losing a weapon that you like. So I like that the game does that. It's very well made in that way. So yeah, this is pretty standard shit. I mean, use your laser cannon when you have the available shields to do so, or use your anti-armor pistol if you don't have that. You can also waste up your rockets, because what are you going to really use them for? You'll get the checkpoint before long anyway. So if you want to waste up your rockets, go ahead. Doesn't matter. I didn't know what was coming up next, so I didn't expand them all. But it wouldn't have been a problem. It would have actually made that part a lot easier. I could have just rocketed the Romanovs and maybe rocketed some of the enemies. So yeah, cigarettes. We're going to be talking about those when the hill comes up. Be prepared for that, because I'm going to go into very, very specific directions on that part. You're probably going to want, if you're doing that part, you're going to want to rewind the video and try to follow it step by step if you're trying to do it the way I did it. The thing with the way I did it was that it does take a lot of skill to pull off. It's not an easy thing to do, basically. But beating this game on God Hard is also not an easy fucking thing to do because of some of these parts. There's a few parts in this game that are kind of like a brick wall, and I think there's a lot of players who would get to some of these few parts and never get past them because it just it seems overwhelming. Especially the final bosses. That's the real run killer, I think, for most players. Especially based on the leaderboards where there was only 80 people at the time who had even completed the game on God Hard. So, but there were thousands of people who got to the last bosses, but only 80 who actually, got through and beat the game. I mean, that was back in 2009. There's a lot more information now, too, which helps, but you're still going to, regardless of the information, there's really no cheap tricks for some of these parts. But I will have very specific strategies that you can follow for that hill, and if you do it right, you have a good chance of getting through eventually. You should be able to get through. You just got to get used to the way that I'm moving. Now, I've seen other players play the hill, and some take a slower approach, but I don't recommend that at all because, for me, it was very tedious and frustrating because you have to watch 2 cutscenes every time you restart that part, which is a fucking bitch. I hate watching those fucking cutscenes every time I die. And then I had to reload out to the title screen to get the cigarettes back, which takes a little while to do, which is also very annoying to have to do. Every time I wasted 3 cigarettes, I'd have to restart at the title screen. So, very annoying. But doable, But if you do try to fight all the enemies, they're going to infinitely respawn. So, the only thing you're doing by killing enemies, it seems, is just buying yourself a little bit of time to move up the hill a little bit. But you're going to get mobbed anyway, so I use a very different technique of bypassing all the enemies pretty much. So I'm going to get into that. I'm probably not going to be able to explain it as quickly as it's being done because I beat it in about 40 seconds. So it is going to be hard to keep up with the commentary, but I am giving you a little preliminary information to prepare you for that. So yeah, now, I didn't say much here because you're only dealing with one robot and an easy enemy. This is all shit you can manage, especially if you still have your rocket launcher. You can just rocket the bastard. So, at this point, this is pretty tough. I mean, it's really not that bad, but it's a little tricky. You're going to have to take out 2 of these robots, these huge robot bosses, but you can take out 1 at a time, so it's not as hard as it sounds. So first, you're going to deal with the spider robot. So, to start off, you want to try to laser one of his legs so that he goes down and you can hit his core easier. So take off a leg. Now use your laser or anti-armor. Or actually, you have the rockets still. Use your rockets on this. And you can actually reload your weapons faster by switching weapons when it goes into the reload animation and then switching back immediately to the weapon you were using. I do that sometimes with the rocket now to reload faster, so that is something you can do. It's called canceling, animation canceling, basically. something I learned recently. I didn't really know about that, but it can give you a little bit of an edge. Every little bit helps anytime you can save on reloads. So yeah, another thing you can do with this first guy that the Ripper 999 pointed out to me is you can weaken all the limbs first and have them down to 1 sliver of health each. And then you can just start finishing them off. That way, like as soon as he recovers, you can take him down immediately again by taking out the other limb that you almost destroyed. I actually end up doing that on the next robot, but you could do it on this one too if you want. But you really don't need to because this is pretty damn easy. I mean, you just take out the leg and then try to damage the core. It's pretty damn basic. You have plenty of room to like run around and dodge shit, go behind crates. Now you're gonna have to do a little quick time event once you get him down again, and now you can finish off that little bulb on his head. So put a few shots into it and finish it off. So now this part is harder. What I recommend for this is taking out all 4 limbs down to a sliver of health. Don't finish them off yet. The Ripper 999 is the one who gave me this strategy, which is very good. So this was not my own. But yeah, take it down to a sliver of health. Take the other one down to a sliver of health. And you want to do that for the legs as well. You'll get used to dodging these attacks. It's mostly just by rolling out of the way. They're usually pretty easy to dodge for the most part. He does do an attack that rains grenades. That's a one-hit kill, that laser that comes out of his chest, but it's very easy to see and dodge unless you're not looking at him. If the camera's not focused on him, you can easily miss it, but it does have some sound cues as well. So yeah, you want to wear down all the limbs to get them down to about a sliver of health, as low as you can get, basically. You don't have to get them, down to 1 hit or anything. Just get them down really low. And do that for all the limbs. The laser works great for that. Though if you do get hit, your shields are going to be depleted and you're not going to be able to shoot as often. There is a very long wait in God Hard mode to recover your health when your shield's drained. I think it's like it takes twice as long or something on this difficulty. I think that's one of the things that makes it harder as well as the damage. So yeah, we got 1 leg left at this time. You see, you can just easily roll past the missiles. Just roll dodge them. You got those invincibility frames when you roll, so use that. So now I take out one of his arms since I wore out all the limbs. And I use my rocket. And I'm getting a faster reload, I think, by switching the weapons as the reload animations take place, then switching back. But I forgot to reload one of my rocket. I forgot to reload my rocket, so I didn't get that 3rd shot in. I fucked that up. But you get the idea. Now I was able to take out the next limb because it was already almost destroyed. And, start unleashing the rockets again and the laser and all that shit on his core. And, the anti-armor pistol works pretty good for this as well, so it's good to have that. See, and now his other limbs are ready to just break, so he's not going to be able to fight for very long before he gets taken down a 3rd time. So now you get the quick time event. Mash X to punch him in the head till his head explodes. This next part is kind of tricky, and I died a few times on this end part because I didn't know exactly where I had to shoot him. So see, his leg has some health, and I destroy his final leg, but nothing happens, as you notice. And now I shoot him in the back. Again, nothing happens, but I did deplete all the life bars. It is easy enough to deplete those. But now, after he recovers, he goes down, so I'm assuming maybe because I already destroyed the leg, he has a delayed response to it, which is kind of odd. I think that's what happened. And then at that point, it's easy. You can just finish off this core once he's down. You should be able to do it pretty easily. Use the pistol to finish it off if you need to. But if you don't get him down quickly, he'll do this missile rain attack, which you can flip around. You can just keep rolling to dodge it, but I didn't find that to be too reliable, and I would get killed sometimes from that. There is another rocket back here as you see me approaching. So you could have also grabbed that at some point and used that to get more ammo. Or if you got here without the rocket, you could probably just boost to the end of the map, grab the rocket, commit suicide, and then start the checkpoint with a rocket. And then, of course, that rocket at the end of the map would still be there, so you'd have 6 rockets available. So that is, that is the kind of bullshit you can pull worth doing if you don't have that set up. So yeah, it's not that bad with that strategy. I end up picking up the lock-on lasers. I recommend swapping out your anti-armor pistol for a lock-on laser for this upcoming part. I ended up getting it in a different part of the map, but I edited that out. But yeah, so the lock-on laser is going to be extremely useful for these upcoming sections. We're going to start climbing these hills, and you're going to get an idea of what the the hill mechanic is like with skipping the enemies. But it's the final hill that's brutally difficult. These ones are not too bad. They're pretty easy. I mean, there's one that's a little tricky, but they're nothing compared to the final hill. So definitely expect a fucking lot of frustration when you get to that part. But hopefully my method will give you an idea, and maybe you can change it up a little bit and improvise on it. Though I wasn't really able to change things up very much at all, because anything I did differently seemed to get me killed. So that was pretty much the path that I kind of felt forced into. But I have seen people play it differently, so... my method doesn't leave a lot of room for error, because you're putting yourself in a very dangerous position where you're going to get killed pretty much instantly if you don't continue moving. It's very, very specific. So yeah, don't use the lock-on laser inside the building. It doesn't work. It needs an open sky for the lasers to travel. There's another lock-on laser in the weapon rack as well to the right. So waste this one up. Remember that you don't need to focus and aim the... if you're in cover, you don't need to hold down the left trigger to aim your lock-on laser. You can just hold right trigger and just move it all around in blind fire mode, and you'll lock onto the enemies. You'll see me abuse that later. I don't really do that at this point, but you have decent cover here. You can kind of just get below this area and just try to sneak out. You'll know that you have a lock on when it beeps and it shows the little aiming reticle, the little red square on top of the enemy means that he's locked on. You can just release at that point. I use a rocket here to get rid of this vehicle guy. It's just faster. You don't need to conserve rockets for this part anyway, because you'll get a checkpoint soon. But yeah, just lock on laser the remaining enemies, roll back as needed. As long as you play it safe, it's very easy. There are, of course, these vehicles that you can also hijack and ride, but you would not want to do that in God Hard mode, because you get stuck in vehicles and turrets and things like that, and you'll just get gunned down. You don't have enough time to really move. So, I pretty much never do that. The only things that I will use sometimes are the turrets, but I use those, in a limited way as well. So here I pick up another lock-on laser since I depleted all the ammo. And just take your time with this. You can just kind of move slow and just take out the enemies, because they don't respawn. There's not infinite respawns for this part. There is for the later hill part, though. But for this, it's just, once you kill enemies, they're permanently dead. So just take your time. So now you get a checkpoint. So you can pretty much do whatever the fuck you want with no consequences, because you got the checkpoint. So for this part, I recommend doing a skip here by... first, I lock on laser some of the enemies to thin them down. I do recommend doing that first. You probably don't... you may not have to do that, but the problem is you can't really stun grenade the enemies up in the tower because they're too high up. So yeah, lock on laser the guys in the tower that can shoot at you from up above, and then use your stun grenades to just kind of roll and bust in here. And just spam your stun grenades and just bust through. Ignore the enemies. And once you get up at the top, you'll get the checkpoint. I recommend doing that instead of trying to fight anything. Aside from the enemies in the tower, you do want to take them out with the lock-on laser first. For this part, again, just use your sliding and stun grenades. You can throw stun grenades while sliding. It's the fastest way to throw stun grenades. And you're going to be using that on the hill. But yeah, just use 2 stun grenades, skip those enemies, and you don't have to fight those 2 guys. Not that they're difficult, but you don't have to waste your time on them. So now we have another hill. And you can kind of thin out the enemies here again with the lock-on laser before moving up. This one may be a little trickier if it is if it's the room that I think it is, but I'm not sure if it's. I'll know when I see it again. I beat this maybe a day or two ago, so it's not completely fresh in my mind. Use the laser possibly to take out the turret. It's a better way to take out the turret. It takes it out fast with that laser cannon. You just gotta, melt their head. So yeah, I think this is the area. Yeah, once you get in here, it's dangerous because see, I didn't have a shotgun. I didn't have any close range weapons. That was my problem. So I was pretty much in a bad position. If I had a shotgun or something, this would have been easy. But without any close range weapons, I had to use, I think, an extra stun grenade. And I had to hope that my shields regenerated so I could use my laser cannon. And of course, I used my rocket at close range. But it's not always the most accurate thing to use at close range. Not a great close range weapon for the small enemies. You can, of course, use your melee attacks, but then that drains your shields, and then you can get killed a lot easier. So it is a little tricky if you get up there without any good close range weapons. I don't really recommend having a shotgun for this part because then you'd probably have to get rid of your rocket since you want the lock-on laser for a little while. Though, you probably could have gotten rid of the rocket. You probably, looking back, you probably didn't need the rocket for these hill segments because there's not really any large enemies or anything. So, I probably didn't need the rockets. I could have got it again later for the bias enemies. So, yeah, I guess in retrospect, I guess I would say it probably would have been good to have the shotgun instead of the rocket launcher for all the hill segments. So if you're watching this first before playing the game, maybe get the shotgun earlier than I did. I ended up having to get the shotgun for the hill segment because I did it a very specific way, that final hill. Very, very specific. So yeah, up here is very easy. All you got to do, use the lock-on laser from a distance and just clear out all these enemies. There may be one surviving enemy that you can't reach. But, just go down and finish it off and you'll get to the next area. The main hill is going to be coming up very soon. That's where it gets fucking ridiculous. I think this entire act took me something like 4 hours and 30 minutes or 4 hours and 40 minutes. I'll put it in the description when I post up this segment of the tutorial. I'm going to post it all in a single video eventually when I finish the game. I'm just taking my time. As I said, I beat this 9 years ago on this mode, and there were some brutal parts, but I'm doing it again because I want to record it this time, make a tutorial. It'll definitely be one of the hardest games on the channel because of those few parts. Yeah, so now the nightmare for this level begins. And this part is a bitch. So expect to die a lot. You're going to be watching these same shitty 2 cutscenes that you can't skip again and again. It's going to drive you fucking insane, most likely. It made me fucking crazy. But this is done very specifically, so I'm going to try to detail it as I'm doing. I'm going to have to explain more of it later, but because it's only 40 seconds. The way I do it is only like a 40-second segment. So you can just roll past this transport unit. I was experimenting with roll canceling, boost roll canceling to try to move faster, but I still haven't gotten it down. I did it years ago for the final bosses, but I forgot how I did it. So yeah. For this part, boost through the gate immediately. There's going to be a stupid fucking cutscene that you're going to be watching a lot of times. Now boost to this left wall here and take cover in the middle of this wall, right in the middle of it. Use the cigarette immediately. Once you use the cigarette, boost around the wall and straight up. Now shotgun these 2 guys as you're moving into the tunnel. Get against cover on this wall. Use the cigarette immediately. Now go around this wall, boost straight up through these barriers. Throw your stun grenade as you're boosting through. Throw another stun grenade and just try to bust through here. If you need to use another stun grenade, use it, but just keep busting through here and you'll get through. Very specific. I'm going to have to explain some extra details about how the cigarettes work. Of course, while you're sliding, you throw grenades much faster. That's why I throw them while sliding. You have to take cover in the middle of that first wall, because if you go on the edge, one of the robot enemies will jump over or shoot you through the edge and fuck everything up. Also, the robots will sometimes jump over the wall and melee you, and you just have to reset when that happens. It fucks up the whole cigarette process. Now, as long as you didn't throw the cigarette out, it doesn't count as being used. Now, for this part, I blind fire the lock-on and take out all these enemies. I just do that until I clear waves of them. And once I have breathing room, I fire at the main cannons. You want to take down the main cannons. So let me get more into the cigarettes. You have 3 cigarettes to use per level, pretty much. Per act, I believe. And the cigarettes waste permanently, which means that the only way to get the cigarettes back is to go through the mission select menu on the title screen and select the closest mission to where you last were. Now, luckily on the hill, the part that you can select is mission 2-5, Act 2, mission 5. And that's actually like very, very close to where that final hill is, so you won't have to fight any enemies. So you can just get your cigarettes back for that part by reloading that part. And you'll get all 3 cigarettes back. But it is a pain in the ass. After you use all 3 cigarettes, you'll have to do that. It shows how many cigarettes you have remaining when you use them. It's in the area where your weapons are. It shows it very small. It's like this. It's that little cigarette icon above your laser cannon on the right side of it. But the way you use cigarettes is you get into cover and then you hit your thrust button, which is LB, and that'll use your cigarette. And as long as you don't get shot or interrupted, you'll use it. You can take a few shots, but once he throws out the cigarette counts as used, and it has an effect on the enemies. What it does, it's similar to a stun grenade, in that it makes all the enemies fire at the cigarette that you threw, and it gives you time to bust through and rush through areas. So what I'm doing with the cigarettes on the hill is I'm throwing out the cigarette to distract the enemies and save on having to use stun grenades, because I'm budgeting everything to be exact. So when I throw out the cigarette, that gives me enough breathing room to rush up to the hill and get into that tunnel where the 2 enemies are. I shotgun those 2 enemies, then I get to that barrier outside the tunnel, and I use my cigarette immediately. As soon as I take cover, I'm using a cigarette. And if that cigarette goes through, I have a good chance, because it gives me some time to roll up the hill further, and then I can use my 3 stun grenades to stun the enemies for the rest of the way to get into that entrance and up those stairs. But you really want all that shit to go through. If you miss one of the cigarettes, it becomes almost impossible with my method to get in there. So it is going to require some luck to get all those cigarettes activated as well. You don't want to get interrupted during those. And if he throws out the cigarette, it will waste, and then on your next, when you respawn again, you only have like 2 left or whatever you had left. So you'll have to go back out to the title screen, go back to mission select, and select Act 2, Mission 5, and you'll be right around that area. You won't have to fight any enemies. You'll just run past a transport unit. You'll be right back there. And you'll get your cigarettes back. So just keep that in mind. The cigarettes, I underestimated how important the cigarettes were when I first got there years ago, and I think it took me like 5 hours to beat that one checkpoint. This time it took me 1 hour and 40 minutes, but probably because I realized how important cigarettes were, and I was willing to reset earlier on and get the cigarettes back. Because I was grinding it out for a while, just trying to do it with stun grenades, and it was fucking insane. I mean, I got close, but barely. So the cigarettes really gave me the edge on that method. So yeah, not much to say here. You're going to have to clean out the Romanovs, I believe, and the 2 cannons before you get to the next checkpoint. I believe it makes you kill the Romanovs. You can't skip ahead just by blowing up part of the big machine. I think you have to take out the turrets and the Romanovs to get to the next checkpoint. You have a lot of cover here with this huge-ass crate. And, you got a lot of things you can do. The disc launcher is good for stunning them, but it barely does any damage. I think if you hit them in the head with it, it might take off their heads, but I'm not sure. I was just fucking around with it. The main thing I was doing was like the laser cannon and the rockets. Those are the main ways to take those guys out. And you will get a checkpoint, so if you die, you'll get your rockets back, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Just don't waste rockets on small enemies. Just use them on the Romanovs. And use your laser. They're not going to be much of a threat because they're so far in the distance. You're going to take them out the same way we've been dealing with them. Just take your time. It's easy. But yeah, blind firing the lock-on laser was the main new tactic that I introduced for this part. I kind of talked over it fast because I was trying to finish explaining, the hill, which is one of the hardest parts in the game. So I was trying to provide a little bit more detail on that. But yeah, by getting in the cover, you can blind fire the lock-on laser, as I was saying, and just wave it all around as you're holding down the fire button, and you'll lock on to tons of enemies. And you can do it real fast without putting yourself in much danger, because you're only popping out for like a split second to lock on. So I recommend doing that for that part and taking out. You want to clear out the waves of small enemies with the lock-on laser by blind firing it, and then you can concentrate on the cannons and eventually the Romanovs. I believe more and more waves of those small enemies do come in, but I think it is a limited supply of them. I don't think it's unlimited, but it gives you some breathing room before the next wave comes in to shoot at the cannons, which you're going to be using the laser cannon to mainly take those out. So now after that's done, you're going to have a very hard fight, which is with these bias enemies. Now what I recommend doing is having the rocket launcher, as I said, and you want to use all 6 rockets to take out one of the bios. So focus on one of them first. Try to ignore one of them and just focus on just one single bios. If you can group them together, you can, hit them with splash damage from the rockets, but it's better if you're just fighting them separately. Because if they're swarming you 2 at a time, you can see it gets kind of aggressive in here. I think that's what ended up happening to me, but you want to mainly just target one of them with the rockets first. Get all your rockets out on one of them. Use your stun grenades to give you some breathing room, and your hand grenades as well. Waste them all up on the enemies. Hand grenades are good, especially if the bias are close to each other, because you'll damage both of them at the same time. But yeah, once you've used up all your rockets, you can get another rocket launcher. But if you're not able to get it right away, this is where I recommend having a shotgun as a secondary weapon. You can defend yourself with that a little bit. And I was able to finish off the guy at close range with the shotgun. I used the stun because my health was bad. So I wasn't confident that I would survive without the stun grenade there. So I was able to finish him off with the shotgun. Now this part is relatively easy but tedious. It's going to be sliding across the map to get away from this guy, and then using laser cannon to fire at him from far away. And there's also another rocket available. I may have already grabbed it and used it. I probably already grabbed it and used it. I wasn't paying attention exactly what I did. But there was another rocket launcher right by this crate, if you missed it. If you rewind the video, you'll see me grab it. So if you have a rocket launcher already, you can get a second rocket launcher. So you have 6 rockets to use. Now, if you don't already have your rocket launcher to start this fight with, you can just grab the one by this crate, commit suicide, and you'll respawn with the rocket launcher in your default loadout. And then you can just grab the extra rocket launcher, get those 6 rockets. So either way, you can be equipped with 6 rockets doing that. Now what I do is I get a lot of range and use my laser cannon. Like I said, I recommend having the shotgun as a secondary by this point. You would already have the shotgun if you used my strategy for the hill. So you should already have that in your inventory. But if not, you can grab it off of like one of the weapon racks and just commit suicide. So you can start off with it. You don't even need to commit suicide. You can just grab it and use it. But all I really do here is I dash to the other side of the map using my boost slide. And I get all the way to the other side of the map, and then I just use laser cannon on him from a distance. And then when he gets close, I roll out of the way of his attack, slide back to the other side of the map. I pretty much just keep repeating that. And I do get close to death a few times. It is still dangerous, but I think this is probably the safest way to do it. It takes a while, but it works. One of them is not really that bad to deal with on this big map. You can fight them with the shotgun if you want up close, but without stun grenades, it is riskier. I do that as a last resort because I was just playing it safe. But yeah, just take your time and be careful when they get close. Get ready to get the fuck out whenever they get close. Don't try to stick around. I don't even bother fighting them because they have attacks that can go through the crate. It's kind of glitchy. They have a swiping attack. I think it kills you in one hit. And it'll go through the crate. It'll like basically glitch through the crate and kill you. So they're not too safe. Even if you're taking cover, they can still hit you through the cover sometimes, which is cheap. So here I ended up finishing him off with the shotgun. I decided, because I didn't have any boost, I couldn't get away. So I think I pretty much had to fight him with the shotgun at that point. Didn't have any stun grenades. So it's good to have the shotgun when you really need to, you get in a situation like that and you have to take him out. I like using it as a backup plan for if I get trapped. But yeah, it's a tough fight. It only took me 15 minutes this time, but I think it did take me longer initially when I got there years ago. When I got there years ago, I used the LFE weapon, and I used it to group them together, to push them back so that they were all grouped together. And then I used the rocket launcher to hit them both at the same time. And I think I took them both out at a similar amount of time because I had them grouped together with the LFE. But I wasn't able to do that this time. I tried it briefly. What I did was I took cover by that big crate in the beginning on the left, and I waited for them to come around the corner both together, and then I used the LFE to group them together and rocket them both simultaneously. But I actually contributed that strategy in the game fac that's up on GameFAQs by Apathy, but it didn't work for me this time, so it may not be a great strategy to use. I think the strategy I use this time is a lot more reliable. So I'm coming back to it now. I would recommend using this strategy. So yeah, now the rest of this level is really not hard at all. You pretty much almost beat this by this point. So here I was shooting that red thing because it looked like it might be a weak spot. I was unfamiliar with what exactly I needed to do. But yeah, take out these cannons when you get a chance. The Romanov with the hammer's not very dangerous. I mean, he doesn't really have any guns. You can kind of just ignore him somewhat. Take out those cannons. The laser works very well for that. I finished this one off with the shotgun because I didn't want to wait for my shields to regen. You can shoot it with the shotgun and do very little damage if you get right under it. So if you need to finish it off, you can do that quickly. I think you may need to take out these Romanovs with the hammers. These ones may also be required for the next checkpoint. So, I mean, if they get close, you can deal with them. They're both hammer Romanovs, though, so they're pretty easy. I mean, I guess they have a flamethrower, but they have to get really close to use it. So, they're not too much of a threat, as long as you keep an eye on them. But take them out when you get a chance. You have plenty of cover and areas to move around that are fairly safe. The cannon can't hit you in a lot of areas, so, I mean, it's usually, it's fairly safe. Just take your time and just take these guys out. So yeah, once you're down to the last one, it's very easy. I think these ones have gas tanks on their back too, so if you shoot the gas tanks, I think you can take them out very quickly, which I probably should have done. But I wasn't really in a rush. I mean, it was an easy part. I just took my time. When you get a chance, take out the remaining cannon. I left it alone because it wasn't really a threat behind this crate. It wasn't shooting at me, so wasn't worried about it. So yeah, finish off the last guy, and I think you get a checkpoint here. Actually, no, not yet. What you have to do is after you destroy the Romanovs and the two cannons, now the weak spot will be exposed. Now, without the cannons, it's very easy. You don't need to get hit like I did. I thought that being behind the crate might give me some cover, but it doesn't work. It shoots right through the crate. So Don't try to take cover on this part. Just roll out of the way. You have plenty of time to roll out of the way of it. And it doesn't one-shot kill you. It'll just wound you, and you can just roll. So there's no reason to get killed by this. So then at this point, all you need to do is melt that red thing in the that red weak point. So just use your laser cannon or your... well, you probably don't have the anti-armor pistol if you've been following the guide. And you've probably wasted your rockets already. But just use the laser cannon. Very easy to take out. You know, you just have to wait for your shields to regen with that weapon. But aside from that, it's very easy. It doesn't do any attacks except for that one power shot. So, you know, you can even fuck up a few times. You'll be alright because you won't die in one hit. So now you get the checkpoint. And for this, I now that I have a checkpoint, you can die and get your 3 rockets back. Since you have a checkpoint, you get all your ammo replenished when you die. So I immediately used 2 of the rockets on that eyeball, that red spot. And I don't know if they both landed, but that was what I started with. And then I tried to get the 3rd one in, but I was unlucky with that. So what I ended up doing was taking out the 2 machine guns to give myself some breathing room. And then I just went and, finished off the eye as usual. If you do take out the eye first before you take out the guns and shit like that, I think it may actually end the mission, but I don't remember exactly. But I mean, at this point, it's very easy. Once you got to this point, you're pretty much done. So here I take out these guns. I don't know that I needed to take them out. I just took them out because they were machine gunning me. They were kind of annoying. And then you can very easily just finish this thing off. Now, my death count is not going to be accurate for this because when I use the mission select to get the cigarettes back in Act 2, Mission 5, it reset all my deaths. So the main thing that would tell you how long it took me is the time it took me to beat, which I think, like I said, was maybe 4 hours and 40 minutes. I got to double check, but I'm going to put it in the description. And when I complete the game, I will also have my full completion time listed. The reason I have that data is because I save all the recordings, so I can see exactly how long it took me. So yeah, the mission time and the deaths is not even remotely accurate here. It was, for Act 1, it was also not accurate because I restarted, and I explained that in that video as well.